mean, I like hunting. Now I do more than I did when I was younger. I mean, literally, and I'm not trying to cry the blues here, okay? We came from a piss poor family, okay? Don't get me wrong. We came from a great family. My dad was very loving and supportive. My mom was always there for the kids. Nothing weird was going on. My sisters, I love them. They're great. But we came from a poor family. And my dad worked his butts off, his ass off to, both butts off, to support the family. You know, and I used to be ashamed of that kind of, not ashamed, but I didn't talk about it too much. But after being on the road and singing country music, I noticed that no matter what you say you are or what people, you know, try, like the record companies or whatever they try to promote you as, if it varies just slightly from who you really are, people are going to find out. That's one thing about country music, is that people will find out if you're bullshitting them. And I can't say that we haven't promoted things in the past that were a little bit more elaborate, but when it comes right down to it, when you get older, when you grow older in this business, like, well, I'm getting there, that you start learning that. And but anyways, I just finally said, you know what? People ask me, I'm going to tell them the truth. We were freaking poor, okay? And the thing is, I'm not complaining, because I have a lot of acquaintances throughout life that, you know, their parents would almost chase them out of the house with $20. Here, take this $20 and get the frick out of the house, you know? I mean, obviously, $20 was a big deal to us. I mean, if that ever happened, I'd take it when I was a kid, but I'm glad my mom and dad never did. But, I mean, you know, as far as hunting goes, we broke the law. We violated deer to eat. I mean, I'm not proud of that. I'm not proud of breaking the law. I'm not. But the thing is, it's true. We had to eat. And my dad worked 2 jobs and raised beef cows and did the best he could. And I think he did pretty good. I know he did pretty good. Anyways, eventually he did pretty good is what I'm trying to say. But he worked himself into a frenzy. And he would hand me 5 or 6 .22 shorties, and he'd give me the .22 rifle and say, okay, he says, I'm going to work, and when you get back from school, I want you to lay down as many deer as you can. And he says, when I get back home from work, he says, I'll wake you up, and we'll go take those deer, and we'll skin them out, and we'll get them in the freezer before any law comes. Well, anyways, we violated quite a few deer in my day, and like I said, I'm not proud of this fact, but the thing is, we ate it too. I think you should be able to take a deer, or any animal for that matter of fact, as long as it's not endangered, if you're going to eat it, if you're going to consume it, if you need it as a family. I think that law would be a good law. But anyways, politics aside, that's just that's fact. That's how I grew up. But, you know, and of course we had our brush in with the law. And I have to say, no names mentioned, but there's been a couple conservation officers in Michigan that looked the other way. They looked the other way because they knew that we needed it, and I thought that was pretty cool. And there's been times, you know, I was a young kid, you know, we were just out and having fun. Just a couple of times, me and the buddies used to go out there and we used to go woodcock hunting, or we used to go pheasant hunting or whatever, and it wasn't because we wanted to eat, it was just to hang out with the guys. And I remember one time, me and 3 or 4 of my buddies, we went out to the back field. And this is actually probably 10 years later, and my dad, we didn't have to kill things to eat anymore, and he got a job in town, and he was doing pretty good for himself, and the family was doing pretty good. We got a new house, and it was actually, it was alien to me. It's like, wow, I live in a house like my friends live in. Holy cow! It's like a 3-bedroom ranch. And anyway, so I'm starting to, you know, do things more social in my life. Instead of being so reclusive. And we went on hunting one time, and I had a camouflage vest on, and it was hunter's orange on the inside, but it was camouflage on the outside. And all I remember is that we went out, and we had a couple guys had a rifle, and a couple guys had shotguns, and we were out there basically just target practicing in my dad's back field. And it was after dark. It was just dusk. It was just starting to get dusk, and law in Michigan is you can't fire after dusk. But, so we were doing some target practicing, and we were shooting at some woodcock and stuff like this here, and we didn't get nothing. We were just shooting around, having some good old boy country fun. And all of a sudden, a guy with a flashlight walks up and says, "Hey," he says, "are those guns unloaded there?" I thought it was my dad coming home from work. He was some ways away, but he had a flashlight shining on us. And I said, "No, Dad, they're loaded." I said, "But we can unload it." He said, "I'm not your dad." He says, "And can you put your weapons down?" And I thought, "Oh, I've heard that before." So anyways, it was the game warden. And we had no good excuse being back there. In fact, we had no licenses. We were just basically shooting at targets or, trying to get a bird or something. And it was wrong, but the thing is, I'll admit that. So he says, "Well," he says, "why don't you unload your guns and put the ammo in your pocket and walk with me?" And I knew this walk. My 3 or 4 friends with me never did this before, but the thing is, I've been through this a dozen times. So, "Why don't you walk with me?" So I knew where we were going. We were going to go to the squad car. So, anyways, he says, on the way back, he's asking, he's like, "Now, do you guys got plugs for your guns? Because you're only supposed to have so many shells in there when you're shooting at migratory birds." And he says, "Shooting a rifle after dark," he says, "there's no excuse for that, so we're going to have to talk about that when we get back to the car." And he says, "I noticed a couple of you guys don't have Hunter's Orange on." And I'm thinking to myself, I got a shotgun. So, and it's a single shot, so I don't need a plug. But damn, that Hunter's Orange, wait a minute. I got Hunter's Orange inside my vest. So we're walking to the car, and I got to the point, it was kind of a moonlit night, so I got to a point that there was a whole bunch of trees around there, and I slowly took off my vest and walked, and I kind of faded back behind the officer, and I turned that vest around, and I zipped it up real slow and gingerly like. We get back to the car, and my buddies go back in the back seat. He says, "Joe," he says, "get in the front seat." I mean, he obviously knew my first name. We had a relationship at that point there. We were on first name basis. And he says, "Well," he says, "out of everybody that should know, you should know, Joe," he says. And so he says, "I'm going to start with Joe. Mr. Grinsteiner," he says, "what kind of gun we're using?" I said, 16 gauge, single shot. He says, "Well," he says, "okay, you don't need a plug for that." He says, "As for the Hunter's Orange," and he looked at me, he kind of jolted back, he looked, and he says, I said, "What about the Hunter's Orange?" He says, "Well, and he starts scratching down on his sheet there, and he could not get me for nothing. But 2 of my friends in the back seat, their dads were state police officers. That worked out pretty good.